What's up, everybody? Steven here for Off the Shelf Movie Night to talk to you about physical media, about Blu-rays and 4Ks, DVDs, the way we like to buy and own our movies and TV shows and watch them when we want, present them in a beautiful library. If you're not a physical media collector, you can still have a great time here on this page because we talk about movies. But if you are a physical media collector or you want to be a physical media collector, you are definitely in the right spot. Hit me up in the comments. Let me know about your collection because that's why I'm here. So hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell so you stay up to date on my updates. They're kind of random. I don't really have a set new videos go up on this day kind of thing. I should, but my schedule just doesn't allow for it. So join me in this conversation. Let's talk about movies. What I'm doing today is pulling something off the shelf and talking about it. We haven't done this in a while. This is going to fall into a couple of different categories. This is a movie review. This is also a presentation review because we have a new release of an older movie, and it's also a bonus features breakdown. I want to talk about the bonus features a little bit too. Don't worry, it's not going to be a 30-minute video. I'm going to keep this relatively short. So the movie I pulled off the shelf today is the 1981 film Blowout, directed by Brian De Palma, starring John Travolta, Nancy Allen, John Lithgow, and Dennis Franz. Brian De Palma is a director. And this is I'm scattered, but this is a new 4K release from Criterion, and that's why we're talking about it because it has this new facelift. And I've never talked about this movie on the channel before. So Brian De Palma is someone who does noir-style mysteries, and a lot of his films, his ideas for his films and eventual scripts come from things that happen in real life. He is just impacted by those. And this movie is one of those situations. This has a lot of different pieces going into it. This is a controversial film because this is not one of his more... It's become popular now, but for a long time, when it came out, it didn't do well in theater. And for a long time, it was considered a lesser film compared to something like The Untouchables or even Body Double, or I think even Dressed to Kill in a lot of ways. But people have come around to this movie, and there's a few reasons why maybe it didn't do as well. It's a dark movie, not just literal. It is literally dark. It's shot a lot at night, but the storyline is quite dark also. I really like this movie. Now, I have a soft spot for any movie that has filmmaking within the story. I being a documentary filmmaker myself, I just love that. So let's get into it. John Travolta's character, he is a film a sound recordist for film, and he is out recording scratch sound in a park at night. He's getting different sounds, an owl, trees rustling, people talking in the distance. He's just recording sounds for a horror movie he's working on. Well, there is a car crash that happens, and he records the crash. He ends up diving into the water, into a lake that's there, and saving a woman who is in the car. Turns out that car was being driven by the governor of Philadelphia. He is killed, and also turns out the woman, played by Nancy Allen, that Travolta's character saves is a prostitute. So there's a big controversy, a big cover-up that's happening. They try to shut him up. They don't want him speaking about it. They want to let the governor die with some dignity, that kind of thing. Well, things get complicated when he revisits the sound that he recorded and discovers that he has evidence that it was a murder and not just a fatal car accident. So this is where the noir mystery part begins. And at the same time, there is a serial killer killing people, Liberty Bell Killer. So you get this story also. Now, this sounds like the setup for a wonderful De Palma film. This film has everything that is signature Brian De Palma. It has his split screen storytelling. It has his split diopter filmmaking. Now, if you don't know what split diopter is, this is something that is more of a thing in film than now we have shooting on video. It's a whole different thing. But split diopter is where you have someone or something in the foreground and someone or something in the background, but everything is in focus. You have to work to do that. There's a split diopter. You have to use this to do it because otherwise the thing that's in the foreground or the thing that's in the background is what's going to be in focus. Because of the depth, you won't have both. And, one of my favorite things about controlling the eye of an audience is the rack focus. Rack focus is where you have one thing in focus and then you rack to the other thing. And what you originally had in focus goes out. So anyway, he loves the split diopter. He loves to play with that visual because the eye doesn't really work that way either. You have in your eye a shallow depth of field. What's closest to you is what's in focus. So there are many scenes in here where you have someone in the foreground and someone in the background and everyone's in focus. And that's just a De Palma thing. I know that was more probably than you needed. But anyway, all the pieces are here. One of the big challenges in this movie is, I believe, it falls on Nancy Allen's shoulders. A lot of people don't like her character, and I think they misunderstand the situation. So her character is a woman who makes some really terrible decisions. She's manipulated into the scheme to embarrass the governor for money, and further manipulated into, without getting too spoilery, what other things that happen. Now, in Nancy Allen's mind, even, back when this movie was made, in her mind, she thought this woman has to be really stupid to fall for this situation. So she chose to play her as an airhead. She chose to play her as stupid. She is definitely a damsel in distress, but she is airheaded, and in the development of the script to make it fit the characters, because the script was originally not written for Nancy Allen, not written for John Travolta, so they mangled up the characters a bit to make them work for those two actors. In the development of the character, she made her kind of an indecisive type of person, made that personality show through. And looking at it deeper now, it makes perfect sense what she was doing with this script, and I think it's great. And there's something very, kind of darkly humorous and retro about her character. Her character is so retro in her dialogue because she mixes up a few different accents to create the way this character talks, and she sounds very, very out of time compared to John Travolta, who is actually doing good John Travolta acting in this movie. This was when he was still an actor and not a personality. Famously, his performance in this movie is what got him the gig in Pulp Fiction, because Tarantino had seen it and loved his performance in it. So, yeah, I think some aspect, and in this movie, without spoiling it, you need to watch this movie, is very dark. And it was released as a summer movie, and that was a mistake. Nancy Allen says in interviews, and so does Brian De Palma, that they had intended it to be a fall or a spring movie, and that's what they wanted, but the studio put it out in the summer. De Palma was a name. John Travolta was a big, big name at that time. He was actually probably stepping down to do this movie in a lot of ways because he had really established his career. But he liked De Palma. They were friends. De Palma helped make John Travolta a star by putting him in Carrie, which is, probably my favorite De Palma film. That's a big, big thing to say, but it probably is. And that's just something that De Palma was doing in that era of filmmaking, in that he reused people he worked well with. If you look at everyone that is in this movie, Travolta had done a couple. Nancy Allen had done 4 in total of his movies, including this one. De Palma and Allen were married. They, to me, were like a power couple in that era. I think she had some amount of influence on the quality of his product, just like Deborah Hill did as a producer and as the wife of John Carpenter. They split, and both of those directors' filmographies kind of changed. They kind of changed. But anyway, she had done several. John Lithgow is in this movie, playing a very sinister guy. This movie is probably what set his career on that path of being the sinister guy. He plays that character so well in this movie. He had been also in another De Palma film. Dennis Franz had done a couple. You may recognize that name from NYPD Blue, because that's kind of something he was famous for. So anyway, he had his crew. He had his trusted, team of actors with him. And I think that's great. But also, I think maybe the thing that might have hurt this movie at the time was that committee filmmaking aspect. Looking at it now with different eyes, not as a summer blockbuster. I love this movie. I think it's beautiful. It's suspenseful. The sound element in it, even though this doesn't give you the biggest options for sound, it sounds great. It's important. It's just kind of cool to see behind the scenes, on the side of filmmaking, because De Palma is also riffing and joking about horror films too, about schlocky horror films and the certain things that they require. I mean, that's a little like, there's a lot of, of that kind of dark humor in this movie, and you'll see it. This film also famously is one of the early films to use the Steadicam. Halloween had used it before, but even the creator of the Steadicam said that he wasn't in love with the way it was used on Halloween. He feels that it was much better used in this movie, and it's used a lot, and it's beautiful. So we have, if you want to see it, and I highly recommend that you do, we have this 4K release from Criterion. The new 4K presentation is absolutely gorgeous. Now, it is not going to be the film that you demo with. This is not going to be the film that you put the 4K in and show your friends who don't know 4K or whatever the glory of it. Because this is a dark film. It is not going to be that one that just pops in the way that some other movies shot on film do. But if you compare it to the previous releases, and you do get a Blu-ray in this set, you can see that the HDR makes the colors pop a lot more. There's not as much crush in the blacks. Blacks are black and not that grainy gray. Film grain in the Blu-ray version is all over the place. It is still very present here, but it is controlled and not distracting. Detail is high, especially all these scenes at night. There's things in the background that I've never seen before that you can actually see again. It's a very, very solid transfer. As I said, it's not going to be the one that just blows the doors off when you show it to people. I mean, that's probably, I could make another video on that. I think I have actually on here on the channel. But anyway, it is a wonderful upgrade to a really underappreciated movie when it came out, but now a lot of us love it. The 4K itself, I'll show you the back so you can see the special features there. The special features are all on the Blu-ray, so you're going to have to do that. Other than commentaries, the special features are on the Blu-ray, and there's some really good interviews. There's an interview with Brian De Palma, a lengthy one, and a lengthy interview with Nancy Allen. Both are great. They talk a lot about the making of the film and how it was received and all of that stuff. And how the actors work together in rehearsal. There's so much behind the scenes stuff, and it's so great to see that the two, De Palma and Allen, still seem to have respect and some affection left for each other as they do the interviews. These are not new interviews, by the way. There are no new extras. This is pretty much the Blu-ray that's here, I think, is the previous Criterion Blu-ray. So you just get all those extras. If you're a movie nerd, a real tech nerd like me, there's an interview with the man who invented the Steadicam. And he talks about coming onto this movie, and because in the early days, he was the one who shot with the Steadicam till people learned how to use it. So he talks about coming onto this movie and, being excited to really shoot, it's Brian De Palma. He's going to really shoot some upscale stuff and do something very artsy. And it turns out the first thing he's shooting is footage for a schlocky horror movie that's going to be included in the subplot. That is ridiculous and, funny and whatever. But it's a great interview. So this is not the deepest as far as extras, but there's quite a bit there. There's also TV spots and trailers, and inside here we also get a book, a pretty hefty book with essays in it, and thankfully it is a book. And here's a cool thing in here too. So there's a sequence where Travolta is looking through images, trying to do a sync, which is a cool thing to see if you like movies and you're into film movies, like retro, like that kind of stuff. He is taking a film that he believes has been doctored. He's taking that film and syncing it with his audio, and he's looking at each little individual image, and we get those images in here as part of this book. And it's such a cool ad and so appreciated. Anyway, let me know what you think. There's the inside. I have showed this on my pickup video, but I wanted to actually talk about this movie since I just watched it and I checked out this 4K presentation. This is highly recommended. As I'm recording this in November of 2022, there is a Criterion sale happening at Barnes & Noble, so you can get this 4K for $25, which is great. Now, the Criterion sale is 50% off, but it's 50% off of MSRP. After the sale, you'll be able to get this for $40. So it's still it's not truly 50%, but it's still very solid discount. Highly recommended. I haven't looked at the commentaries, but I will do that. I love to, while I'm working, put movies like this in and listen to their commentaries, and that's something that will happen. But the interviews are very solid. The presentation is archive quality. Highly recommended. Go and grab it. Watch this movie. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you've seen it, let's talk about this and anything else Criterion. Till next we meet, pull something cool off the shelf, share it with your friends and family, and remind them why physical media is the best way to watch films and TV. I'll see you guys on the next one.